$47,382. That's the number that showed up missing from our joint savings account 3 weeks before we were supposed to close on our first house. Not a rounding error, not a bank glitch. $47,382 gone in pieces over 11 months, and I'm the one who found it. Because tracing money is literally what I do for a living. I'm a forensic accountant. I spend my days finding the exact spot where numbers stop telling the truth. I never thought I'd use that skill on my own family. I never thought I'd have to. My husband's name is Jonah. My mother-in-law's name is Ingrid. And by the time I was done pulling every statement, every wire transfer, every line of a trust document she never thought I'd see, I understood something that changed how I looked at every Thanksgiving, every birthday card, every "I just want to help you two" she'd ever said to my face. She wasn't helping. She was taking. Jonah and I got married 4 years ago in a backyard in Ohio with string lights and a borrowed sound system. We didn't have money for anything fancier, and honestly, we didn't want it. We wanted a house. A real one with a yard and a mortgage that was ours. So we saved. Every bonus, every tax refund, every dollar we didn't spend on something we didn't need went into one account. Joint. Both our names on it. Simple. Ingrid had been a widow for about 1.5 years by the time this all started. Jonah's dad, Walter, passed after a brutal stretch with cancer, and during his last few months, Ingrid asked us for something small. She needed someone with power of attorney access to help her manage bills while she was basically living at the hospital. Jonah gave her a debit card off our joint account for emergencies. Gas, food, whatever came up. It was supposed to be a stopgap. 2 months tops. That card never got canceled. I want to be honest about something right now because I think it matters. I noticed the first weird transfer 8 months before I actually did anything about it. $400 moved out on a Tuesday. No memo line, no explanation. I told myself it was a bank error. I told myself Jonah's mom was grieving and I didn't need to be the daughter-in-law who audits a widow's grocery money. I had my reasons for waiting, and at the time they felt like good ones. I just didn't want to be right. The second time I saw something off, it wasn't $400. It was $2,200 moved out in one transfer 3 days after Walter's funeral. I remember exactly where I was sitting when I saw it at our kitchen table, laptop, open coffee going cold beside me, the house so quiet I could hear the refrigerator humming. I told myself it was probably a funeral expense reimbursement, something Jonah had approved and forgotten to mention. I didn't ask him. Not yet. I pulled up 3 more months of statements instead. Because that's how I'm built. I don't accuse, I verify. Here's the part that made this harder than it should have been. Ingrid had also paid for half the funeral out of her own pocket. She'd shown up at our door twice that winter with casseroles when Jonah was too wrecked to cook. She'd sat with me in a hospital waiting room for 6 hours, once holding my hand without saying a word, and I'd been grateful for it. She wasn't a cartoon villain. She was a woman who'd just buried her husband of 31 years, and some days she looked so lost in her own kitchen that it scared me. That's the thing nobody tells you about people who hurt you. Sometimes they're also the people who showed up for you first. But grief doesn't explain a pattern. And by month 6, I had one. 6 transfers. All different amounts, none of them round numbers, none of them ever more than $3,000, small enough I realized later to stay under whatever threshold she assumed would get flagged. They didn't go to a bill. They went to an account I didn't recognize, one that wasn't even in Jonah's name or mine. I sat with that fact for 2 more weeks before I said anything to anyone. I wasn't scared of Ingrid. I was scared of what it would do to Jonah if I was right. I need you to understand something before I keep going, because it changes how you should hear the rest of this. I didn't stumble into this story. I'd already half known for 8 months. I just hadn't let myself say it out loud, not even inside my own head. Hope is a strange thing. It can look exactly like patience if you don't examine it too closely. Once I stopped protecting myself from the truth, the rest moved fast. I pulled every statement going back to the month Walter got his diagnosis. I built a spreadsheet because that's what I do. That's the whole job, take a mess and turn it into a story the numbers can't lie about. 11 transfers total. $47,382 moved out of our joint account in amounts small enough that neither of us noticed until they added up to the exact chunk of money we needed to close on the house. The receiving account traced back to something called the Ingrid Larson Family Trust. Opened 4 months after Walter's funeral. Ingrid listed as sole trustee. I brought it to Jonah on a Sunday night. He read the spreadsheet twice, and I watched his face do something I'd never seen it do before, go completely still like a door closing from the inside. "There's got to be an explanation," he said. She wouldn't. I didn't push. I just sat there while he decided all on his own that the numbers meant something he wasn't ready to hear yet. That night was the closest we'd come to a real fight in 4 years of marriage, and we didn't even raise our voices. We just went to bed not touching. I drove past Ingrid's house on a Thursday, told myself I was dropping off a casserole dish she'd left at our place. I wasn't. I wanted to see her kitchen table. Sitting on it, half covered by a church bulletin, was a manila envelope from an attorney's office downtown, the same firm that had handled Walter's estate. I called that office 2 days later and asked as calmly as I could manage whether I could get copies of any trust documentation connected to my father-in-law's estate. Turns out, being the daughter-in-law of record on an old power of attorney file gets you further than you'd think. The paralegal emailed me the trust paperwork that same afternoon. It confirmed everything. The trust had been funded almost entirely by transfers from an account she'd had access to during Walter's illness. Our account. There was a line item labeled administrative reimbursement that covered exactly none of what it claimed to. I sat in my car outside that office for 11 minutes before I drove home. I wasn't shaking. I was making sure I had every number right, because I only wanted to do this once. I asked Ingrid to meet us at her house, told her it was about Walter's things, something Jonah wanted to sort through. She made tea. Her hands trembled a little around the cup when she set it down in front of me. I noticed it and filed it away the way I file everything. There's a moment from the hospital that kept coming back to me the whole drive over. Ingrid had pressed that debit card into my palm outside Walter's room and said, "You'll take care of things, won't you, honey?" Like it was a question. Like she needed to hear me say yes before she could let herself lean on us. I didn't say a word about the trust. I just opened my bag, took out the folder, and slid it across her kitchen table. The soft click of the folder hitting the wood was the loudest thing in that room. Her whole body went rigid before she'd even opened it. She already knew. "You'll take care of things, won't you?" I said. Same words she'd used on me. Reversed. She opened the folder anyway. I watched her eyes move down the spreadsheet, down the trust documents, down 11 months of her own signature on transfers she never thought anyone would line up side by side. "It wasn't supposed to be like this," she said, so quiet I almost missed it. Just after your father-in-law died, I looked at what I had left, and it wasn't enough. It was never going to be enough." Her hands were still shaking around that teacup, and for 1 second, I saw a woman terrified of ending up the way her own mother had broke dependent, asking her children for gas money at 70. Then her spine straightened, and the moment closed like a door. "You have no idea what it's like to lose everything and be expected to just manage," she said sharper now. Jonah didn't say anything. He just stared at the folder like it belonged to somebody else's life. I'd already decided I wasn't going to argue with her in that kitchen. I wasn't there to win a conversation. I was there to hand her the truth and let it do what truth does. Here's the part I hadn't told her yet, sitting at that table. 3 days before that meeting, I'd already filed a formal report with the court-appointed fiduciary accountant overseeing Walter's estate, along with a certified letter to the trust's attorney outlining the breach. My job gave me the paper trail. My job gave me exactly who to send it to and exactly which statute made an administrative reimbursement indefensible when the numbers didn't match a single invoice. I didn't need to watch her open that second envelope, the one from the estate attorney's office, to know what it would cost her. It arrived at her house 4 days after our meeting. It froze all trust distributions pending audit. and it required full repayment of the transferred funds with interest before the trust could be closed and the rest of Walter's estate settled. $47,382 plus 11 months of interest deducted directly from what remained. She didn't fight it. There was nothing left to fight. The numbers had already said everything for her. There's one more thing I never told Jonah, not even after all of this was over. The very first time I noticed that $400 transfer, I almost let it go for good. What made me actually open a spreadsheet 8 months later wasn't just my own instinct. It was an email from Jonah's sister Priyanka sent to me quietly. No one else copied, just one line. Did Mom's funeral costs ever add up right to you? Something's been bugging me. She never said anything to Jonah either. I think she needed someone else to be sure first before she trusted her own suspicion. That email sat in my inbox for 2 weeks before I finally opened the account history and started counting. I told her months later that she was the reason I finally looked. She just nodded like she already knew that's what the email had been for. I have something to say to you, Ingrid, even though you'll probably never read it, and I doubt you'd want to. You didn't lose your family because you were struggling. You lost our trust because you decided struggling gave you the right to take from us without asking. There's a version of that year where you sat down at our table and told us the truth, that you were scared that the money Walter left wasn't enough, that you didn't know how to ask for help without feeling like you'd failed at 70 years old. We would have helped you. We would have found a way. Instead, you took the choice away from us, one transfer at a time, small enough that you thought we'd never notice. We closed on our house 6 weeks later than planned, but we closed. Every dollar came back with interest exactly the way the numbers said it had to. Jonah still calls his mother on Sundays. I don't get on those calls anymore, and neither of us has decided if that's permanent or just where things sit for now. She's never said the word sorry, not once, not in the kitchen, and not in the 4 months since. Maybe she never will. That part I've made peace with staying unfinished. You don't get to control whether someone else's regret shows up on your timeline. But the money is home. The house is ours. And every time I sit at that kitchen table now, the one we finally bought, I think about how the numbers never lied to me even when a person I loved did.